Mr. Speaker, I rise to report to this Congress on the Porter Ranch gas leak, the largest methane leak in the history of our country. It began last October 23rd and lasted for roughly 5 months. The amount of natural gas that escaped is measured in billions of cubic feet. Some 8,000 families were evacuated for months. Our family, because we live just about as close as anyone to the leaking well, chose not to evacuate, but rather to rely on filtration systems and the fact that we spend much of our time in Washington. So how should Congress respond? We must say never again. Not again in Porter Ranch, not again anywhere in this country. But it could happen again, because this natural gas storage facility was the 5th largest in the country. That means there are 4 other areas that could have an even larger natural gas leak. There are no federal regulations for the safe storage of natural gas. And state regulations are so minimal that they're incredibly minimal even in famously green California. Currently, PHMSA, an agency of the Department of Transportation, acknowledges that it has the authority to write federal regulations. They've decided to do so, and my hope is that they will have them this fall. This arises in large part because I had a chance to discuss this with the President of the United States back in January in front of about 80 or 100 of our colleagues, and he made a commitment that his administration would work to make sure this never happens again. And not only is PHMSA working on the regulations, but OMB has assured me that they will act promptly on approving those regulations once they are finalized. We in Congress are working on legislation designed to prod PHMSA into acting quickly. But it's important that we not pass legislation that actually narrows the existing statutory power, or gives sentences and statutory provisions that could be used by the oil and gas industry to invalidate tough regulations. That is why it is critical that, for example, any statute we pass, as the Transportation Committee's product provides, states explicitly that we're not preempting higher and tougher state regulations, that the action taking in Congress will not make people less safe than their states would have them be. 2 issues confront SoCal Gas, the utility responsible for this leak. The first is that they are going to try to get consumers to pay for the cost of their negligence, using the phrase that they should pass through to consumers the reasonable costs of dealing with this disaster. And so the consumers around Los Angeles should pay for the cost of providing relocation assistance to 8,000 families, many of whom have been out of their home for 5 months and longer. That the reasonable costs of plugging the leak should be passed through to consumers. The reasonable costs of repairing unreasonable negligence is never an ordinary and necessary expense to be passed through to consumers. This leak resulted from SoCal Gas's negligence. There was a subsurface safety valve on the well in question, installed in the 1950s, removed by SoCal Gas in the 1970s, and never replaced. This well they used to inject and remove natural gas, not through the piping that was intended or the tubing that was intended for that purpose, but for the casing that was never intended for that purpose. And the pressures, the amount of gas crammed into the field, seems to be inconsistent with the age of the wells, some going back 60 years plus, that were being used to inject and withdraw the natural gas. So the costs of this event must not be passed through the consumers of Los Angeles. Second, realizing they may have to bear the cost themselves, SoCal Gas has decided to shortchange the residents who have evacuated. They have decided they don't want to pay for the required cleaning protocol necessary to make homes safe. That is their release of just a couple days ago. That is outrageous. The cleaning is necessary to make the home safe. LA County Public Health says so, and SoCal Gas should pay that cost too. I yield back.
The time of the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from West